Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining the Rotary Club of Silicon Andhra, the Vocational Services webinar today. So thank you. We have a wonderful topic today. It would help everyone, the leaders, aspiring leaders, the managers, and everyone. So without any further delay, I would like to request Dushyant Naidu Garu, who is the chair of our vocational services, to introduce our guest speaker today and kickstart the topic.
Thank you, Doug. Welcome, Doug. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon and this evening here for us. First, I would like to tell a few things about Doug. Doug Thompson is a passionate storyteller and TEDx speaker. He can be found sharing his passion for storytelling in his LinkedIn videos and his Tech Story podcast. His passion is coaching and mentoring other technology professions on how to stop explaining and start storytelling. He believes that everyone has a story and it is just a matter of unlocking it from the grips of subconscious mind. Currently, Doug is an AI ambassador and technology strategist director for the education team at Microsoft, where he leverages his 30 plus years in tech sales to help his customers transform the students' experience to empower teachers and students of today create the world of tomorrow. um, on his personal side, I mean, his wife and have more than 37 years enjoying spending time with two children and seven grandchildren and two rescue dogs whenever possible. He's also a retired triathlete and is a two-time Ironman triathlon finisher. So without much ado, I would like Doug to give more introduction and then get started with today's session. Thank you, Doug.
Sure.
Stage is
Thanks for that. Thanks for that introduction. And you can always tell an Ironman finisher is not one of the fast group. It's just, hey, we're finishing. We're like normal humans with that. But it was always a passion of mine. And thanks for having me out here. I truly do believe that everybody has a story, and my storytelling goes way back. I was at a high school reunion back more decades than I care to remember, but we were looking through some memorabilia that they had and some books and all, and there was this excuse for being late, and the slip said, I was late because a Coke truck dropped all its Cokes on the freeway and shut it down. That's why I was late. And then I signed it, and I recognized the bad handwriting, so that was me. But it was approved, so obviously I was telling a story even way back then, and I didn't even know it. So I come from a long line to that. It's something that if I use the term tech explaining in too much in technology, I talk to a lot of brilliant people, and when they're talking to each other amongst themselves, when we're talking technology, there's one conversation, but when it shifts to trying to explain what you're doing or the technology to, say, like a marketing director who doesn't really know anything, or even my wife, I have to be able to sort of tell it in a story. And that's really what my passion is now, is trying to help brilliant technical people get that story out of them. And what we're going to be talking about today is a little bit some of that, and how important storytelling is, and just sort of transformation. And that word's tossed around a lot today in various different things. But I wanted to have a little fun with this. And, if you want to stop in the middle of it, I'll try to take a break every now and then and answer any questions you may have along the way. But with that, we'll go ahead and we'll kick this off. All right. So I should have a slide up. Do I? I can't see it. Okay, good. So when I was a kid, this was a long time ago. I think they were almost in black and white, but Transformers were a big thing. And I watched my grandkids, and I'm a big fan of the movies and all that. And Optimus Prime, he was always the biggest and what everybody wanted to be, because he was the best and he was the good guy. But I got to thinking about this when I was going through some of this transformation and thinking about this. I said, I'm a bit disappointed in Optimus Prime here, and at the end of the day, I really don't want to be like him, because he's got two forms. He's the truck, or he's the big transformer or the big robot, but really he's the same thing. He's just in disguise sometimes. And that's not really, if you go through to the true meaning of the word transformation, it's a dramatic change in form or appearance, which he does. He looks like a truck, and then he looks like a robot. But that, if you apply that to technology, if you apply that to yourself, if you're only changing form or appearance, are you really changing anything? You're simply shifting. The core of you is still the same. So what we really need, is I got to thinking about it, is when we envision things transforming or going on, is this is from Fixer Upper, but we always envision this great big beautiful thing. They come into our house, if we got a project, say we're overworking our IT infrastructure. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to magically come in and we're going to have this whole new thing. This is what we envision. But in reality, we end up with something more like this. We keep adding on bits and pieces that don't really go together. We spend a lot of time trying to get them to talk to each other. And at the end of the day, we've not really transformed. We definitely transformed the look and feel of it, but we really haven't transformed the way that we work or the outcome of it. And so what we really need on this, I'll stop before I get there. This goes to personal too. As I was looking through this, I've been going through and planning on my New Year's resolution. And these are all planners. And if you open them up, half the pages at least are blank. I start off, I get this, I'm going to use this planner. And I start for about a week, and then every other day, and then maybe I'll look at it and I'll do a to-do list and I stop. And I've tried different types because, you read this one, this is the one that worked for me. And I start, and I'm not really changing myself. I'm trying to add something on to what I normally do that doesn't fit. And I don't invest the time, and I don't sit through the struggle to actually make it where it's transformational, or where it actually makes a change in the way that I do things. So again, personal, and I'll be interjecting some personal and business related transformations as we go through. And I got to think, since I'm really not changing anything, I'm simply adding on stuff. What do we really need? And what we really need is a metamorphosis. And if you look at the first part of it's much like transformation, it's a change in appearance or condition. But this adds function. This is what we really need. When we're talking about doing a digital transformation, what we really should be focusing on is a digital metamorphosis of the company. We're reinventing what we're going to do from an IT perspective, a technology perspective, but more importantly, an organizational perspective, because that's where it starts. The technology is on the back end, but much like my planner exercise, if we don't transform, if we don't metamorphosize the culture and the organization, then all the technology, we end up with that sort of jumbled house that we did before. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is a little bit more of a metamorphosis. And I want to start with a story, because I think it's a perfect fit. So in this butterfly story, it's been around for a while, but a guy was walking along the path one day, beautiful day, and he comes upon a cocoon that's sort of up just off the path there. And he sees some movement in it, and he stops to watch for a minute, and he sees the butterfly starting to come out of it. And he sits down, there's a bench there, and he sits down and watches for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, so he's still struggling, expecting any minute that the butterfly is just going to emerge. So about 2 hours later, it just sort of seems that we've stopped. The butterfly has stopped struggling, and not much is happening. And so out of the kindness of his heart, he takes a knife out and cuts the cocoon a little bit. And then the butterfly just flops on the ground, but it doesn't have any wings. The wings aren't well formed, and its body's just really fat, and its short legs, and it can't fly. And what out of the goodness of the gentleman's heart, he thought he was saving this butterfly from some struggle and was going to help him out. But in reality, he doomed that butterfly for the rest of his life to crawl around and was never able to fly. Because it's the struggle. It's the struggle getting out of the cocoon that flushes the fluid out of the big body, out of the caterpillar body, and into the wings. So when it lands on the ground, or it comes out, it can fly. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from really doing this metamorphosis or transformation, is because it's hard. there's a lot of struggle that goes on with it. And it's just uncomfortable. And we stop short of what's possible, which is a shame because it puts us in sort of the suboptimal position. Some businesses I see when they go through and they simply are adding something on, nothing really changes. The organization is the same. Yeah, they've got a new widget that allows them to do something 15 seconds faster, but that's it. It's a bit disheartening. So that's what we're going to be talking about, is a metamorphosis and some things, and how storytelling, as we go through this, storytelling can help you accomplish that with your customers and yourself. Last year, I did a TED Talk. This was one of those bucket list items, sort of like doing an Ironman triathlon I wanted to do. And any speaker, I do keynotes and stuff. Any speaker wants to sort of have that TEDx or TED Talk by their name. And so I applied, to this. I did a little stalking first. I'd applied to a few of the bigger ones around and didn't make it, because I'm up against Gary Vaynerchuk or, Simon Sinek or somebody. That's, I'm going from AAA or going from AA trying to get into the major leagues. So I said, okay, I'm a sales guy. Let me think a little bit better about this. So I said, look, there's some smaller TEDx things that are closer to where I am that I probably stand a better chance of getting in. So I'm trying to double my odds. And so I investigated one that was close to me where I'm in Austin. And I went to the event the year before because they were filled with speakers. I met the person that was running it. And I said, hey, this is a really great event. I'd like to be considered next year. So I kept in touch with them. I stayed in contact and let them know who I was and, made sure I was in front of them. So when they announced the call for speakers, they sent me an email 2 days before they were going to do it so I could think about it. So as I was trying to put in my proposal, I want to say, okay, what am I going to talk about? And I struggled for like this for 3 days because now it's on me. I knew I wanted to do a TED Talk, but I had no idea what I wanted to do a TED Talk about. And so in thinking about this, I had this voice inside, and I think you all have this inner voice, right? And usually the voice is not very kind. The voice saying, what are you doing? You're not qualified to do a TED Talk. You're not good enough to do that. Just withdraw your application. So all this negativity voice in it. And as I was meditating one morning, it occurred to me, I'm not the only one that struggles with this. And this is what I should write this about. Because this story we tell ourselves is the most important one we tell, because it goes into our subconscious. It's with us 24/7, 365. And frankly, mine tells me things that I would never dream of telling anybody else. So that was the basis of the TED Talk, was sort of this inner voice and how you can change that. It's 12 minutes if you want to go see that. I put a link to it at the end of the presentation, but it was scary. It really put me out there. I learned a lot and grew a lot during it. And so one time I'll do I don't want to be a 2-time TEDx finisher. Maybe I'll maybe a 3-time one, but we'll move on from there. And the reasons I love storytelling is because it pulls in more pieces of your brain. Too much of technology is facts and figures. Well, we've got this algorithm which does this, and it's petabytes and petaflops and teraflops, and who can remember all that? Especially as complex as they are now. But if we use stories, this involves more parts of the brain. Our brains are wired to learn from stories. And this is, as I mentioned at the first of it, I was using a story to get an excuse to get back into class earlier. So it's just natural. We should do this. But sometime, and I listen to my grandkids. I watch my grandkids tell stories all the time. But sometime over a period of going through school and these other things, the unfortunate thing is we lose the willingness or the edge of ability to tell stories. We sort of go back to facts and figures and very brief conversations, which is a shame because of all this different activities and stuff that really helps connect with whoever you're talking to. And this is the inner bully I was talking about. I can't do it. I must be perfect. And I think if we took a poll here, I'd say everybody here has had that at one time or another. It's just natural. We all have that. It's the natural human state. Unfortunately, it's negativity. And we just think about that. And that's why people like, Stephen Covey and Simon Sinek are so great, because they're so positive about things. They really want they bring that in and get you excited. So just know that you and your organization, you're going to have people in your organization when you're trying to do this change. We can't do this. It's not too hard. It's too hard, or we have to get this perfect. And if you're in technology and you've never been in a situation where you let the good be the enemy of the perfect, you never ship anything. So these are all things, they sort of cross over. So when I'm going to sort of jump into the business side of this now, and I'll pause for a minute. Does that make sense to the storytelling piece of that? I mean, have you had that inner voice in yourself? I see some people nodding. So yeah, I think we're all there. So just know you're not alone. You may be the only one that hears that voice, but you're not alone, because all of us, I call mine Simon, by the way. So, we're on first name basis, and I put him into timeout on occasion. But when I'm out talking with customers, I go through three phases of this when we're talking about this metamorphosis of this, and they're equally important. And their storytelling comes in each piece of this, and the stories are a little bit different. The usage of them in the what the purpose is a little bit different, but there's stories in each of these sections that you want to do. And we'll start with envision. You see, words mean things to me. So I go to the dictionary a lot in my slides, because I really like to sort of get down to the root of things. And in this one, it's imagining a future possibility. And it's best found in the fantasy section. I like that, because if you've ever read a fantasy book, as you're reading that, say like Harry Potter, you don't go in and think, well, there's no such things as witches and warlocks and stuff. You get involved in what it is. You let go of this past and all these things that sort of anchor you to where you are today. And that's why I like the fantasy part of it. So when we're envisioning, I really have to stress that there are no limits. This is where you want to be in the future. And this is, there's budget's not an issue. This is nirvana, where you want to go. And the reason being is letting go of the past, that's hard, but it's not going to help us to move forward. So we need to dream big with that. And the first thing is that goes along with our mission. Microsoft missions used to be put a computer in every house, then it was on every desktop. And I've been around Microsoft long enough to remember those things. But what do you do when you accomplish those things? Right? So you have to sort of think bigger. And this is the biggest mission that I can, because we're not doing the work. We're simply empowering everybody else to achieve more. That's aspirational. That's getting out of the way and helping other people reach their best. So again, when we're doing the envisioning, we're thinking about utopia. What's that look like? There are no limits. There are no, no cost structures. There's location's not a problem. Competitors aren't a problem. We're thinking about is our company, what's our mission? What do we want to do? Where are we going to be? And start there. And this is amazingly hard. As an individual, when I think about things, I will fall back into that. Well, I would love to be on a TED stage in the middle of these other, in the middle of a Las Vegas, and well, no, nobody knows who I am, and man, I don't have this. The voice comes in. I'm bringing that past and stuff in. It's preventing me from saying, hey, yeah, this is really what I want to do. Because once I let go of the past, I can envision the future. Then I can build a path to the future, which is what we're going to be doing in the next steps of this. So now we've pictured this. We've gone through. This usually takes several meetings, because the first meeting's beating everybody. Oh, I like this, but we can't. So if I hear the word but, I immediately say, nope, that's not right. There is no but here. That's not allowed in an envisioning session. Where are we going? What do we want to do? So keeping focused on that. And then we come in and there is reality, right? We do live in the real world, and we can't live in Harry Potter world where it's a fantasy and have these unlimited type things. So as we start adding, restraints, or listening to that inner voice, what's true? Let's use it sparingly. But more importantly, in this exercise, I make them justify everything they want to lay on. Okay, well, we have a legal responsibility to keep all the data in the US. Okay. That's fine. Well, we like to keep the data in this cloud or that cloud or on premises. Why? Well, because we've always done it that way. Because we've always done it that way, get you evicted out of the room. That is not a reason why. That is holding on to the past. And it's hampering you from getting to your utopian vision. So as you're adding on these restraints, using them as sparingly as possible, but realizing that there is a reality to this. You know, we have things we have to do. It's a location type thing, or there's certain government regulations. I get that. So that's what we got to think about in those type things. And we're adding those on very slowly and justified. Now, the final layer is cost. And what a lot of people get in, and I find this a lot, is they start with cost. Here's our budget. And look, we painted this utopian vision, which is very, very big. It's going to be bigger than anybody's budget. All right. So, because we've laid this out, this is our final destination. It's a few years from now, but this is where we ultimately want to be. So now as we come in, we realize, so again, it's a real world. We have a budget we have to do. What is the scope of the project? What are the steps that we can take to accomplish with the budget that we have that is on that roadmap to utopia? What's one thing we can get done? And we can get done fast, and it's budget and all these other things, and we can accomplish it. Oh, and by the way, it's going to help us, right? So it's going to help part of the business anyway. So we're going to get incrementally better along the way. Now, this process has a lot of benefits to it. One, again, it's sort of, if you have it at the end, you've already sort of established some great things and aspirational goals to work towards without boundaries. If you start with budget, you're immediately constrained, and the but word comes up all the time, but we don't have the budget for it, but that costs too much, but we can't afford that right now. So layer this on. But again, when you're framing it out, as you're framing your project out, or however you're going to do it, what is on my path to where I want to go? Now, another benefit of this, especially with the speed that technology changes, is that 2 years from now, the technology we have available will be vastly different than what we have today. So does that change our utopian vision? Maybe a little bit. So it's time to sort of look back, but we can also adjust a little bit. Hey, well, we got this new technology that would really help what our vision is. So we can sort of take a look. It's like sailing. If you've ever been sailing, you're on one side of the body of water, and there's a point on the other side that you want to go to. And as you're going across, you're navigating the winds, and you don't take a straight line because the winds aren't always in your favor. Sometimes you have to work against it, but you're still keeping where you want to go in mind. And each turn is like a budget or a project or something along helping us meet that. But we also may decide once we're there that, hey, there's another point that's a little bit further that's got even better restaurants, or has got even better things that we want to go see. So that's, there's not a bad thing not to have the whole budget, because if you had to budget for that utopian vision, you've dreamed too small. You've started out too small if you've got the budget to do everything you put in your vision. And that's not going to work. So again, think about that. This is a normal part of the project. Just have a plan and keep going. So that's envisioning. Is everybody sort of on board with that? Do you like that exercise? Is it different than the approach that you're seeing a lot of the time? Yeah, I run. It's hard and it's different, but it is so much fun to get in and have these big dreams and this sort of realizing, because everybody gets pumped and going on. So now we've done here's where we're going to go. Here's the budget we've got. So now we're sort of formalizing our plans, right? But now we have to get the company on board, because this has been typically a leadership decision. And now we have to sort of evangelize, here's what we're going to do while you're putting things in place, because the people want to know. They want to be in on the story. What is this? What's in? And everybody starts from the what's in it for me, right? We all have that. That's the very first lens we look through. Okay, what's in it for me? Is this going to be worth my time? And so here's where stories really start coming in. And this is where we diverge the stories a little bit. And this is a sort of a story arc and stuff that comes on, and you want to connect to the plot. This is, this is sort of nerdery, if you will, on that. But each of the stories we're going to have are going to be tied into the main idea. And there's going to be events along this bottom time frame that goes in here. And then we're going to sort of go through the arc, and they're all to be crafted, but it's still sort of on the main idea. Here's utopia. Here's how we're going to get there. Here's the very first step we're going to take. And so, this is a sale. It's also a sales piece of this, because you got to sell it to your people. And I like this pitch. So Dan Pink wrote this great book, To Sell Is Human. And this is the Pixar pitch. So if you've ever, anybody's seen Finding Nemo, if you got a kid or a grandkid, you've seen a Pixar movie, Toy Story, any of those things. They all have the same pitch. Once upon a time, there was this fish named, a fish was named Nemo, and his dad were here, and Nemo had a small thing. And every day Nemo would go out to the end of the reef, and his dad would freak out and say, look, you can't go do that. And one day Nemo went out and fell off the end of the reef and got caught in the stream. And because of that, they started this wild journey into going to Australia. And because of that, the dad had to get in and got in the stream of things and learned to let go of the past a little bit, learned to trust himself, until finally Nemo and the dad were both met. They both changed, and things went on happily ever after. Every Pixar movie has the same thing, but you could apply this to just anything. Once upon a time, there was a company that couldn't do XYZ. Every day we kept running into the same problem of capacity, website crashing. One day, it just really got so bad that we lost customers because of that, XYZ. So some of this time I run into, this is a great story to use if you have those people that just don't want to change. They say, well, we'll just ride it out where we're at. And sometimes you have to sort of explain to them, here's the cost of inaction. Because there's a cost either way. There's a cost of action. There's a cost to change. But there's also a cost if you don't change, if you don't take that action. And this is a great thing to sort of explain that little scenario. And that, look, if you don't take action, then you lose customers and blah, blah, blah. You can paint the picture. But that sometimes will get them to say, okay, yeah, I get that. I understand now why we need to move and why we need to do this. So we've picked out a few stories. Let's pick out the people that are going to be our storytellers. And here's where we're talking about the same story, but it's slightly different versions of the story. So like the CEO may be telling, here's the blue sky, big picture. He's going to be really great at painting that utopian vision of where we're going to go. And sort of the big rocks of how we're going to get there. He or she's not going to get bogged down in the details. We're painting this big overarching picture to get people on board because we founded the company, and here's what's going to happen. And then you may have division chiefs or different things like that, which have little smaller stories. Here's our piece, right? Here's our little piece of the world, of the story, and here's how we're going to contribute towards the bigger story. And then it boils down to smaller teams and all that. And again, arming each of those people with the ability to tell a story with their audience in mind. And keep in mind, your audience doesn't know what's been going on in your head, doesn't know what's been going on in the back room. You have to go to them and then bring them along. So this is why it's important to know who your audience is and what's important to them, right down to the individual if you can, and frame a story around it. Here's what this big transformation metamorphosis is going to mean to you on your day-to-day life. And that's where you sort of got to keep in mind. And I like to call this starting where your audience is. And I will do things, I will learn, something about my customers, the people that I'm talking to. We have you made a joke earlier about one of the guys here's a triathlete. He runs, he walks, and he flies. So it was a little bit of a fun because they knew I did triathlons in the back. And so we sort of tied it in. But that's buying some goodwill between us. And that's a great thing to do. Learn a little bit about what people do. What do they like? And then how can you tell a story in their language. Now, I work on the education team at Microsoft, and even though in the back end system, a lot of the things that they do from an infrastructure perspective are exactly the same as what Exxon would do, or is exactly the same as what, you know, Intel would do, or any big corporation, you name it, but they don't use the same words as an educator. So it's up to me to learn the language of the educator, sort of say, okay, how can I frame this in a way that is relevant to them and their words, and use their words. And this is what differentiates the best storytellers from those that are more just technical, is you can make that intimate. You can go to where every one of your people are, your audience is, speak their language, and then bring them along for the ride. Because I'm willing to go along with you, but I'm not willing to jump a tall building in a single bound to get to where you are. It may be a knowledge gap. It may be a language barrier. You got to come to me. You got to help me. Tell me the story of why it's important to me, where we're at, and where we're going to go. And this, you know, this takes some skill and it takes some practice to do that. But keeping in mind that you're wired to do this. We're wired to tell stories as well as we are wired to learn from them. So you're simply tapping into the natural workings of the mind, getting more things involved. And it's a lot better than simply saying, okay, here's the project plan. Here's the dates. You're going to do it or you're going to get fired. That's, you know, it's not very motivating. You don't get buy-in. This will get you that buy-in. They'll start telling stories to each other along the way. So now we've gone through we've got the big vision. We've got our storytellers. We've started to tell the stories. And now it's time to do the work. You know, so this is American football plan here. So X's and O's, we get down to that. We've got the project plans. We've got all these other things in place. Now we're starting to work. And luckily, more of the agile mentality is coming in, and more of this, hey, we just need to get something out there that we can iterate on, as opposed to letting the good be the enemy of the perfect. You know, a lot of times in the past, because of the way things, you know, software was sold as a package or a service, you would wait and you do this big monolithic release after months and months and sometimes years, and then only to find that it doesn't work. And now it's too late to do anything about it. But now with this new one, hey, let's get something out there. Let's start on the path. Again, we can't be careless, but let's get version 1 out there. Let's see what it does. Okay. Let's get it out there early, work the kinks out. We'll get better at the next iteration of it. You know, that's why let's fail it. Let's fail fast. Let's make sure we find out what this bug is fast, so we can go back and reiterate and pick that in, and then fail often. Because if you're not failing at all, you're not pushing the limits. You're not doing the best that you can. And if you go back to running or triathlon, if you're not out there where you're just exhausted and about to fall off, or you find out nutrition doesn't work in an Ironman, the eating is the most important part of the race, because you have to give your body some nutrition. There's not enough calories there. And finding that right balance of what works and what doesn't is critical to your day. So, I mean, I've learned some lessons about that the hard day. So get out there, fail early. Don't fear failure. Too many people, well, look, I don't want to fail. I'll get fired. Set that as the expectation. We're going to get it out there. We're going to keep reiterating until we get it right. And here's something else that doesn't go in. Say we just had a release and it's one. And this goes back to personal too. If I go back to personal, sometimes I'm afraid to fail. So I won't take that speaking engagement, or I won't take that test that I need to take, because, well, I don't want to fail. That's horrible. You know, that's unfortunately a lot of the college students that we get today don't understand failure, and they're afraid of it, because all through their college career, they've been told that you have to be the best at everything that you are. So they fear failure. I see a lot of them that fear collaborating with other people, because the other person could let them down and cause them to fail and not be as good. That's just, if you've worked on a team, especially teams that are all around the world, that just doesn't work. You got to share the load. You got to make this work. So celebrating the small wins that go on. So just, you know, hey, we got this done. It recharges the batteries. It sort of resets the stage. You can take a breather, and then you can go on to take the next step of the next project. Like for me, if I go for a month with my new planner, I'm going to be celebrating. There's a bottle of wine. We're going to do some cookies. We'll be celebrating if I can do that new planner for a month, because then I got to buckle down and do it again. Or anytime you make a change. So don't forget to celebrate the small wins along the way. It's critically important to recognize that effort, to sort of decompress and get ready for that next push, that next sprint that we're going to go on to try to get to the end. And listen to the feedback of the team and your customers. What's working? What's not? How can we do things better? Encourage it, because we really should have. Everybody's got a different perspective, sees different things and different experiences. The better feedback, the more feedback we get that's actionable, the better are we're going to be to make it better the next time. What's working, what's not. And a lot of times it's a challenge to tell your boss that, dude, you're pushing too hard. Can we do something? Can we try it better this way? Sometimes you need that feedback as well. But hey, this was a great thing. Sometimes we don't compliment the things that work. We don't compliment, hey, you did a really good job here. To keep feeding that, we all need to hear that positive talk that, hey, we're making some progress here, and I did a good job. I was part of it. And if we do all of that together, we get to do it over again. And it's really that simple. Once you get into the rhythm of doing that, say we've got this first phase done. We consumed the budget for the first project. Now we're going to go back to the envisioning session. Are we still there? Has technology changed or the market changed where we need to sort of adjust UTOPIA a little bit? Okay, we made a few adjustments on that. Okay, let's go back. What do our storytellers need? How can we change the story about what we're going to do? Okay, great. So now we're going to lay on, here's the restraints. Okay, is any of the restraints changed? Do we need to add anything, remove anything? Okay, do we have more budget? Do we have the budget to do these things? And then go back and tell the stories and keep going. And it's really, once you get into the rhythm of that, this is a high performing team. If you look at any of the sports teams, that's what they do. It's wash, rinse, and repeat, wash, rinse, and repeat. And it takes, once you get to this part here where it's second nature, it just works much better and much faster. And then it's not as scary to go on. So as I have successes as a personal in speaking, I made it through the TED Talk. That was hard, but I was able to sort of sit back, I couldn't watch it for the first year after I had it out, because in my mind, Simon had the utopian version of a TED Talk. It was the best one ever. It's going to get 16,000 million, likes and all the other stuff on that. And then as I'm executing it, there were some hiccups on there. There were some challenges. I ran into, the biggest thing I had was had to stay in a 6-foot circle, and I'm a pacer. So I felt like I was in prison. It was sort of unnatural. But anyway, I got through it. A year later, I went back and watched it without the utopian vision in my head, and it wasn't that bad. So I gave myself some room, give your team some room, give the company some room. And this gets back to the failing and going on to do that. So that's where the storytelling comes in. It's a constant, it's with you constantly. It's something that you can keep working on and doing. And if you look at there's the contact info and stuff. I do a podcast on storytelling and all, which is the first season I just wrapped up. And it's been somewhat of a learning exercise as well. The last episode's way better than the first one, but it was a learning process along the way. I didn't wait for it to be perfect before I got out and started to do that. So with that, I'll stop sharing. And if you got any questions, if you'd like to do anything else, let me know. This is your Sunday afternoon. I appreciate you sharing it with me.
Doug, thank you very much, Doug. It's wonderful to hear your stories, and what small things make huge difference as as we try to do these projects, or do some service or whatnot. So it's really wonderful. So please, anybody, if you have any questions, anything that you want to share, your ideas, thoughts, feedback, it was wonderful, Doug. Thank you. So please ask questions, or give feedback, or anything is fine.
I'm sure there's some good stories out there somewhere.
Hi, Doug. This is Priya.
Hi, Priya.
Sorry for the echo. My husband, he's also joined in parallel with his laptop. That was a wonderful session. Thank you so much. So I do have a question. So how do you differentiate, or how do you make your story impactful? Your story might be genuine to you, and you might be sincere in trying to portray the honest best. But how do you make others believe in your story?
So it's sort of, that's an interesting question, in that if what you stated is true, if I've told it from my heart, if I've told it from my experience, and here's the key part, and I've started it from the listener's point of reference, something they're familiar with, it'll make that connection. Now the key is, if you tried to take what I just did as my, if you just took my story and tried to do it for that without the experience of it, or without these other things, it comes across. You talk to people all the time where they're trying to sell snake oil, or you just don't believe them, right? They're not believable. But if you truly are telling something from you experience, and personal stories are the best, that's what, now some of the stories that I use are what I would call a composite character, especially with technology. And this may be hitting more to the point of what you've got. I have several customers, and as I talk to them, they're all in various stages of this, along the path there. So not everyone has done every bit piece of it, but as an aggregate, they've completed this journey that I've talked about. And so what I will do is I'll create a composite character based on all the different things I know about those customers, which is, at the root of it, it is true, because each of these things it's just not that it wasn't one person. It is simply a story arc that goes on from a composite character. And if you watch movies and stuff like that, they will do that as well. Sometimes it'll be a composite character of what's going on. But the two most important things is make the story, you have to feel it, because there's this unseen energy that will come out of you when you're relating a story that is you, that you have familiar with, that you've touched and you've been there, and then starting it from their frame of reference. And that sometimes is the hardest part, because sometimes it's something like, if you take a cultural type thing, so if I tried to go tell a story from just say like China, I'm not as familiar with that, but I would have to get sort of these cultural norms and stuff. Now I have talked to people from India, and the caste system, the different things, and that sort of impacts the story a little bit where you're at along that arc. But it's, if you start from that point with that understanding and take them along the way, then it works. I hope that answered. That was a long story for a short question.
That does answer. Yeah.
So if I may add, Priya Garu, the story one, you should, the person who is telling the story should believe in the story to start with. And number two, when you're telling the story, it should come from your heart, not just, we are telling story to the kids where, we know it's all fictional, but, you try to make it. So that those things, people easily can see through it, whether it's a real story or, the story is made up. So being honest and truthful, and then, coming from heart, and then you believing in the story, obviously, I think we'll get more listeners.
Have you ever told like a child or a grandchild a story, read out of a book, anything? Have you ever watched them do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even understand the words, but the voice inflection that you use and the facial expression, that they get that it's a positive type thing. So that energy there, if the structure and the information you're trying to share and the body of that works with adults too. We're just big wired. My granddaughter likes this thing called a pout fish. I do this thing with the pout fish, but it gets so much laughter out of it, and I become the pout fish. It's just a way that you can do that and tap into that. Too often as adults, we get hesitant to make ourselves vulnerable. So here's the key piece: being vulnerable. Hey, I made that mistake. I know this company I just talked to last week was in almost exactly the same place, and they decided not to do this, and blah, blah, blah. So you can relate things that are public in such a way that sort of ties back into the story that you're telling too.
True, true. See, my question was more over so because, like, see, nowadays with the technology or the kind of the virtual, new normal that we are all bound to, and with the sensitivity of, being everything on Zoom or on the virtual side, everything that we may present as a genuine story, you are being questioned or asked on the data. Everything again narrowly forced down or somehow again goes back to data speaks. So how do you then relate your story to the data? Because here, though you're genuine, it's again question to, is that the data? I mean, if the data speaks, then the story is somehow interpreted as a truthful story. If not, even if it is genuine from your heart, or even if you're trying to be it on a sincere effort, that is never taken on a serious note. So that's where I was trying to.
So I there's some people that are very gifted at telling story with data on that, and it can be, again, trying to simplify to a character. This is getting in. Usually with data, you're looking to solve a problem, prove a point, or do something like this, and you sort of have to work it in reverse into finding out, okay, what's important to them? What do they want to get out of it? What are their biases? They may have a bias against the data. They may be thinking, we can't afford to do this. The data says we don't have enough sales. Okay, then in thinking about how I'm going to tell the story to that person, I need to show the story of another company or something doing something very similar where here's the data that proves my point. Data can be used to prove just about anything. But if you do that and you tie it in, that's the best way to do it rather than simply numbers. There has to be something that gives those numbers meanings, real, sort of something tangible. And sometimes you get nerds, which you have to sort of explain, and it's I get that. I'm not the best at those stories, but it's mainly when you're talking to somebody that's maybe business oriented. They may want numbers, they may want sales numbers or something like that, that I can tie it into that. This was 20% increase in sales because of XYZ. Here's how, here's what was going on behind the scenes to get that done. And so you can do it. It's just, those are a little harder because, and it just simply depends on who your audience is too, but you can do the same thing with it.
Good, Doug. There's another question here in the chat. I will read it for you. Hello, Doug. I loved your presentation. I am in the midst of a technical transformation at my workplace. And as a leader, I need to bring my team on board to adapt and flex. However, if benefits are not evident in the near term and might be more felt in the long term, how do you build that conviction to ensure they stay committed?
Yeah, that's the short-term attitude about things. You're one of them. You're upfront with them. Say, hey, look, we're going to struggle. This is going to be hard. I since I used to train for an Ironman, I would say, look, there were weeks, worst 25 hours, I was tired all the time. I went through, but when I showed up on race day, all that work that we did and all the other stuff showed up where I could go do that. I mean, there's different. You have to find out what each of those individuals, what's their biggest challenge with that. I understand there's work, there's a time balance type thing, but it's going to be somewhat individualistic on how you do that. And if you've sold the vision of the long term, sometimes it's, hey, do you want to stay employed? Because if we don't do this, we're going to be out of business. I mean, that's sort of a negative story. I don't like using those. But that's where celebrating the small wins in between, because you will have those small wins in between, which will help sort of say, hey, look, okay, we are making some of these short-term benefits to that. Sometimes it is a sprint to say, look, we've got to get, this is the baseline. It's going to be hard for 6 weeks. There's not going to look like a lot of project, but if we don't do this, or we can't take these next steps, but if we do this, so it's a positive, negative story. If we do this, then the next 6-week sprint or whatever it is, we're in a much better place because we've got these regressions out of the way. We've got these other things going on. We don't have to go backwards. We can take a break and go forward. So it's better that way.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. And Sanjeev Garu, do you have any follow-up questions to that? Okay, he said, thank you. Very helpful.
No, yeah, I'm good, Raju. Thank you, Doug. That was very helpful. Again, yeah, as you said, I think ensuring that they stay committed is the biggest challenge because each person probably has a different motivation and you need to tap into that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we all need to make sacrifices. I mean, that's a key aspect. And
and I think if you know, most of the teams I've been on that if everybody's making a sacrifice, everybody's okay. They have a problem if I'm making a sacrifice and Joe over here is not. Right. So
right.
Can you sort of tie that into that as well? So finding that motivation, that means talking, making sure you know what it is. What's their inner voice telling them that it's bad? You know, here's this inner, well, we can't do it. What's their really, what's holding them back? What's their fear? Usually it comes down to fear, right? And it's identifying that, not negating the fear. You have to say, yeah, I understand. That's scary. And here's how this other stuff here we're going to do is going to alleviate that fear for the next one.
Yep. Yep.
So
thank you. This was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you, Raju Garu, and the entire club. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev Garu. Any more questions? We have another few minutes. We can take maybe one or two more questions.
Yeah, this is Sim Gopal, and I have a question and an experience too. I mean, it is amazing. Your presentation was really great, Doug. One thing is, I was thinking about people with mental health challenges. And when I was communicating, for instance, a couple of them, you know, first listen to them and then listen to their fears and then build a story on as though it's something which happened real and go through, like you mentioned, start from the positive side as to how they would be if they go through the kind of treatment, because I'm trying to lead them towards the professionals, right? And so when I brought them those stuff, it seemed to really work on a couple cases at least. And it was really an interesting experience from there. I think other than the business aspects, you know, in these things too, it was very, very helpful. And
yeah, I like to use a lot of biographies or different things because there's somebody that's always had a bigger challenge than I have.
Exactly.
It's something, and if you can find something that sometimes it's a book to read. Sometimes you talk to professionals, say, hey, look, I've got somebody that's got this anxiety, and what are some stories or different things that I can give them that sort of gives them hope and sort of helps do that, or that would bring them to you to get the help that you need or something like that. So you know, I don't ever hesitate to reach out to a professional in a specific field to do that. I don't you know, I'm not a psychologist.
True. Yes. I mean, what was amazing in what you mentioned, and then this whole thing is neither am I a professional and I'm not an expert in it, but I found it really fulfilling when you talk to them about a positive story and then lead them to the professionals, right? In that aspect, I think every one of us, this helps a lot.
Yep.
Learning from them. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for you know, spending some time with our club leadership and members today. And you know, the topic is so close to everybody at every level. You know, everybody can benefit from it. So glad to have you. And